She was shaking at the bus stop when he took off his coat. 6:48 in the morning. Broad and Ellsworth. Snow on the ground, snow on the benches, snow on everyone who'd been standing there long enough for it to matter. James Whitfield had been there 11 minutes. His car wouldn't start. His driver wasn't picking up. He was the kind of man who hadn't waited for a bus in 20 years, and it showed. Cashmere coat, Italian shoes, phone in hand refreshing his Uber app every 30 seconds. The woman 3 feet away had been there longer. Thin jacket, no scarf, arms crossed over her chest, a canvas bag on her shoulder so full it pulled her sideways. She was shaking. Not the polite kind, the kind that means the body gave up being subtle about it. He held out the coat. "Take it," he said. She looked at him. "I'm good," she said. She was not good. He opened his mouth. She reached into the canvas bag and pulled out a child's jacket. Orange, North Face. Walked past him to the boy at the end of the bench. 7 years old, no coat, hands jammed into a hoodie and zipped it up to his chin. Went back into the bag. Another jacket. Gloves. A yellow hat with a pom-pom. She worked down the bench like she had a list. 5 kids. 4 minutes. 1 bag. She never put anything on herself. James stood in the snow with his coat still in his hands and didn't say anything because there was nothing to say. He'd walked up thinking he understood the situation. He didn't understand anything yet. Laura Kim had given away her good coat in November, not by accident. On purpose, to a woman at the Kensington shelter who had a baby on one arm and a trash bag of belongings on the other, and a jacket so thin Laura could see it wasn't doing anything. She had taken off her coat and handed it over before she thought about it long enough to talk herself out of it. That was 4 months ago. She'd been wearing the thin one since. She told herself she'd replace it. She hadn't. Not because she forgot. Because every time she looked at her bank account and looked at the coat and looked at Sodi's school supply list and the electric bill and the copay for Sophie's last checkup, the coat ended up at the bottom of the list. It was always at the bottom of the list. Things that were only about her always ended up there. She was working on that, sort of. The canvas bag had started as a grocery bag. Big, heavy-duty canvas. The kind that holds 40 pounds without complaint. She'd bought it for $4 at a dollar store 3 years ago and had slowly, over time, changed what she put in it. Now it held 8 jackets on Tuesdays and Thursdays. 8 jackets, 10 pairs of gloves, 6 hats. Sorted by size the night before, organized so she could get to the right one fast. Because the kids at the Broad and Ellsworth stop didn't have a lot of time before the school bus came, and Cole didn't wait for her to dig around. She knew every kid by name. Marcus, 7. The one who always said, "Thank you, ma'am," like he'd been taught by someone who meant it. Destiny, 9, who pretended she didn't need the gloves and then put them on the second Laura turned away. The twins, Deshaun and Darius, both 8, both acted like they didn't know each other at the bus stop, for reasons Laura had never figured out but respected, and 4 others who rotated depending on the week. She kept a notebook, small, spiral-bound, lives in the front pocket of the canvas bag, a name on each line. What they needed, what she'd brought, what was running low. She updated it every Thursday night at the kitchen table while Sophie did homework across from her, the two of them working in the same silence the way people work, when they're comfortable enough not to need to fill it. Sophie didn't know what the notebook was for. She thought it was a grocery list. Laura hadn't corrected her. Not because she was hiding it, because explaining it meant explaining 2019, and Sophie was 8, and 2019 was a year Laura had not yet found the right words for. She and Sophie had spent 11 weeks at the Roosevelt family shelter on Spring Garden Street. Not because Laura had made bad decisions, because she had made all the right decisions, and the math had still come out wrong. A landlord who sold the building without notice, an apartment search in a Philadelphia rental market that had no interest in her timeline, a savings account that covered 6 weeks and not 11. She had done everything right and ended up at a shelter intake desk at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday in March with a 3-year-old on her hip and a rolling suitcase, and the specific, disorienting feeling of being somewhere she had always assumed was for other people. It wasn't for other people. It was for anyone the math came out wrong for. She understood that now in her whole body. The shelter had been fine. That was the honest word. The staff had been kind. Sophie had been too young to understand where they were. Laura had kept them on a schedule the same as always. Meals, baths, bedtime, because the schedule was the thing she could control, and control was what she needed. What she remembered most was the cold. Not from the shelter was heated. From the mornings when she took Sophie to the bus stop for daycare, the two of them standing in the March wind, Sophie in the only warm jacket Laura had packed, because she hadn't planned for 11 weeks when she packed, and Laura in a fleece that wasn't enough. A woman had given Sophie a hat, just walked up and put it on her head. Didn't say much, didn't make a thing of it, just saw a kid without a hat in the cold and fixed it. Laura had thought about that woman for 5 years. She didn't know her name. Never saw her again. But the image of her, walking up, putting the hat on Sophie's head, walking away like it was nothing, had stayed in a way that most things from that year hadn't. When she got back on her feet, apartment, job, the math working again, she had started volunteering with Cold Weather Kids Initiative, not because someone asked her. Because she knew what the woman at the bus stop had known. Cold didn't wait, kids couldn't fix it themselves. And sometimes the only thing between a bad morning and a worse one was someone who showed up with the right thing. She showed up every Tuesday and Thursday, had for 4 years. This Tuesday, she'd been at Broad and Ellsworth for 9 minutes before the man in the cashmere coat showed up. She'd clocked him immediately, not because he was unusual exactly, but because he was wrong for the stop. Too dressed, too distracted. Looking at his phone with the expression of someone for whom standing at a bus stop was a temporary malfunction rather than a regular Tuesday. She'd been focused on Marcus, who was at the end of the bench without a coat again. His third week without one, which meant something had happened to the one she'd given him, and she needed to find out what. When the man appeared at her elbow with his coat out, she'd looked at the coat. Good coat. Warm. Probably cost more than her rent. She'd looked at him. He meant well. She could see that. He'd looked at her and seen cold, and done the math, and come up with coat, and he wasn't wrong. Exactly. She was cold. The thin jacket was not enough. She was aware of this every morning and had made her peace with it. But she had 8 kids to get through in 12 minutes, and a man offering his coat was a conversation she didn't have time for. "I'm good," she said. She reached into the bag. She got to work. James Whitfield had not taken a city bus in 22 years. He knew this because the last time was 2002, his first year in Philadelphia. Before the business had money, before the money had a driver, and before the driver had a backup driver for the mornings when the first one didn't answer. He remembered the route. The 4 down Broad Street, 50 cents. Standing room only at rush hour. The specific, he caught himself, the smell of it. Coffee and wet coats and the particular closeness of a city in the morning before it had fully decided to be awake. He'd forgotten that smell. He'd forgotten a lot of things, apparently. His car had died at 6:31 a.m. in the parking garage under his building. Not the battery. Something worse. Something the building's maintenance guy had looked at and said, "Yeah, that's not a today fix," with the calm of someone who didn't have an 8 a.m. board meeting. His driver had a family emergency. His backup driver was 40 minutes out. His Uber had canceled twice, so here he was. Broad and Ellsworth, 6:48 a.m. snow on the ground. A bench full of people who looked like they did this every day, and one man who very clearly did not. He'd been on his phone since he arrived. Emails. The board deck for this morning. The funding review his team had sent at midnight that he hadn't finished reading. Cold Weather Kids Initiative was on page 4. Nonprofit partner. 3-year relationship. $240,000 annually. The numbers weren't good. Cost per child served, $847. Industry benchmark, $340. The gap was significant. His director of philanthropic investments, a careful woman named Patricia who had worked for him for 9 years, had flagged it with a single line in her summary. Recommend reconsidering partnership at next cycle. He'd read that line at 6:15 a.m. with his coffee. He hadn't thought about it since. He'd thought about it now exactly 0 times while standing at a bus stop watching a woman in a thin jacket hand warm clothes to children. He watched her work. She was fast, efficient in the way of someone who had done this enough times that the movements were automatic. Reach, size, name, next. She knew every kid. Not just their faces, their names, what they needed, what they'd had last time. The boy at the end of the bench, the one who'd gotten the orange jacket, she'd said something to him while she zipped it up, something quiet. The boy had nodded like it answered a question he hadn't asked out loud. James watched that exchange and felt something move in his chest, not sentiment. Recognition. He'd grown up in Radnor, mainline Philadelphia, the kind of suburb that existed specifically so that people didn't have to think about what happened 4 miles east of it. His parents had been comfortable, his schools had been good. He had not, at 7 years old, stood at a bus stop without a coat. He had not thought about that much. He was thinking about it now. The woman finished with the last kid, a girl, maybe 9, who took the gloves and immediately put them on, and then looked at her hands like she'd forgotten what warm felt like, and turned back to the bench. She sat down 2 seats from him, pulled out the notebook, made 3 quick notes, put it back in the bag. She was still shaking. Not as bad as before. The movement had warmed her some. But her jaw was tight, and her shoulders were up around her ears. And she had not taken anything out of that bag for herself. "You're still cold," he said. She glanced at him. "I'm fine. You're not," he said. Not unkindly, just observationally. She looked at him the way people looked at someone who was stating the obvious and calling it help. "The coat's still available," he said. "I appreciate it," she said. "I don't need it. You're shaking." "I'm aware," she said. He looked at the bag. "How many mornings do you do this?" he said. She looked at him, reading whether the question was real or whether it was the kind of question people asked when they wanted to feel like they were engaging without actually engaging. She decided something. "Tuesdays and Thursdays," she said. 4 years. 4 years. He did the math automatically. Occupational habit. He couldn't turn it off. 4 years. 2 mornings a week. Roughly 40 weeks a year. 320 mornings. Standing at bus stops in Philadelphia, in whatever the weather was doing, in a jacket that clearly wasn't built for February, handing warm things to kids who needed them. "The organization you're with," he said. "What's it called?" She looked at him. "Cold Weather Kids Initiative," she said. James went very still. Page 4 of the funding review. Cost per child served $847. Industry benchmark, $340. Recommend reconsidering partnership at next cycle. He looked at the boy in the orange jacket at the end of the bench. Marcus, she'd called him Marcus. He'd heard it. 7 years old. No coat until 4 minutes ago. Now zipped up to his chin, hands in the pockets, face tipped up slightly like he was testing whether the sun was going to do anything useful. $847. That was what it cost, according to his team's analysis, to serve one child through Cold Weather Kids Initiative. He looked at the woman next to him, at the canvas bag, at the notebooks she'd just written in, at the thin jacket and the shaking that hadn't fully stopped, and the coat she'd refused because she had 8 kids to get to before the bus came, and a man offering his coat was a conversation she didn't have time for. He thought about page 4. He thought about Patrice's line, recommend reconsidering partnership at next cycle. The bus came around the corner at the end of the block. James looked at it. Then he looked at Marcus in the orange jacket. Then he looked at the woman next to him who had been doing this for 4 years on Tuesday and Thursday mornings and was still cold and hadn't said a word about it. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She was already standing, pulling the bag onto her shoulder. "Bus is here," she said. "I know," he said. "I'll make it quick." She looked at him. "How does your organization measure what it does?" he said. She stopped, looked at him with the first expression he'd seen on her face that wasn't neutral. "Why?" she said. The bus doors opened. They got on. Not together, she went first, bag over one shoulder, card already out. He went second, fumbling with his phone, trying to find the SEPTA app he'd downloaded and never used. The driver waited with the patience of someone who had seen this before and would see it again. "Cash?" the driver said. "I have the app," James said. "App's down," the driver said. James looked at his phone, looked at the driver, looked at the line of people behind him. Laura reached past him and tapped her card twice. "I'll pay you back," he said. $250, she said. "Don't worry about it." She was already moving toward the back. He followed because there was nowhere else to go. The bus was full, the way city buses were full at 6:55 in the morning. Not packed, but occupied. Every seat holding someone on their way to something that required them to be up this early. A woman with scrubs under her coat. 2 men in construction vests. A teenager with headphones so large they looked structural. Laura sat in the second to last row. He took the seat across the aisle. She opened the notebook again. He watched her add something, a name, a check mark, a note in handwriting too small for him to read from 3 feet away. "You asked how we measure what we do," she said, without looking up. "You heard that," he said. "I hear everything," she said. "I work a bus stop." She finished the note, closed the notebook, looked at him. "Why do you want to know?" He could tell her. He could say, "I run a family foundation. We've been funding your organization for 3 years. I have a report on my phone right now that recommends we stop. I watched you give a coat to a boy named Marcus 12 minutes ago, and I am trying to figure out if $847 per child is a number that means something or a number that means nothing." He didn't say any of that. Not because he was hiding it. Because he wanted to understand what she knew before she knew who he was. Because the moment she knew who he was, the conversation would change, would become careful, managed, the specific performance of someone talking to money. He'd heard that performance before. He didn't want it. "I'm trying to understand something," he said, "about how organizations like yours get evaluated." She looked at him steadily. "Organizations like mine," she said. "Nonprofits," he said. "Small ones. Fieldwork." She looked out the window. Philadelphia moving past. The city waking up. Corner stores pulling back their gates. A man hosing down a sidewalk that immediately froze again. "We get evaluated on cost per child served," she said. "Number of items distributed. Geographic reach." She paused. "Funders want numbers. We give them numbers." "And?" he said. "And the numbers don't tell you that Marcus has been coming to that stop for 3 weeks without a coat because his foster placement changed, and the new family didn't have his size." She said it flat. Not angry. Flat. The way you say things you've said before to people who didn't fully hear them. "The numbers don't tell you that Destiny pretends she doesn't need the gloves because she's 9, and she's trying to be tough, and if I hand them to her directly, she won't take them. But if I leave them on the bench, she'll pick them up before the bus comes." She looked at him. "You can't put that in a spreadsheet." "But you could count the gloves," he said. "We count the gloves," she said. "We count everything they ask us to count." "What don't they ask you to count?" She looked at him. The bus hit a pothole. The woman in the scrubs grabbed the seat rail without looking up from her phone. The teenager's headphones slipped sideways and he pushed them back. "Whether the kids came back," Laura said. "That's what they don't ask." "Whether they came back," he repeated. "Marcus came back 3 weeks in a row," she said. "That means he trusts us. That means when something's wrong, when the placement changes, when he doesn't have a coat, when he needs something he doesn't know how to ask for, he comes back to the same spot because he knows someone will be there." She looked at her hands, at the notebook in her lap. "You can't measure trust. So funders don't ask about it, so we don't report it." She paused. "But that's the whole thing. That's what we actually do." James looked at the window, at Philadelphia going past. He thought about page 4. Cost per child $847. Industry benchmark $340. He thought about the benchmark, where it came from, who had set it. Whether the organizations hitting $340 per child were doing what Laura was doing, name by name, Tuesday and Thursday, 4 years, notebook in the bag, or whether they were doing something that was easier to do cheaply because it was easier to measure. He already knew the answer. He'd known it the moment he saw her work the bench. "Who funds you?" he said. She named 3 foundations. He waited. She named a 4th. "Whitfield Capital," she said. He said nothing. She looked at him. Something shifted. Not on his face. He was careful about his face. 20 years of board meetings had made him careful. But something. She caught it. "You know them," she said. Not a question. He looked at her, at the thin jacket, at the canvas bag, at the woman who had paid his bus fare with a tap card and had 4 years of Tuesday and Thursday mornings in a notebook in her lap and was still cold because she'd given her good coat away in November and hadn't replaced it yet. He thought about Patricia's line, "Recommend reconsidering partnership at next cycle." He thought about Marcus in the orange jacket. He thought about trust, how you measured it, whether you could. Whether it mattered that you couldn't. "I know them," he said. She waited. The bus stopped. 3 people got off. 2 got on. The doors closed and they were moving again. "How?" she said. He looked at her. "I run it," he said. The bus was loud the way buses were loud. Engine, brakes, the ambient noise of a city moving through itself. But the seat where Laura was sitting went quiet in the way a space went quiet when someone received information that rearranged something. She looked at him, at the cashmere coat on his lap, at his phone still open to the email he'd been reading when he got to the stop. She thought about the funding review she'd presented to her executive director last month. The numbers that weren't hitting benchmark, the conversation her director had said was coming, the three organizations they'd already lost this year to the same conversation. "You're reconsidering the partnership," she said. He didn't answer immediately, which was its own answer. She looked out the window. "How many kids do you think 340 buys?" she said, not loud, not angry. The voice of someone doing math in real time, "Because I can tell you what $847 buys. It buys Marcus coming back 3 weeks in a row. It buys Destiny picking up the gloves off the bench." She looked at him. "What does $340 buy?" He didn't have an answer. That was the problem. He'd had the number for a week, and he hadn't asked that question once. She got off at Spring Garden. He got off with her. Not because he'd planned to. His stop was 4 blocks further north. The office, the board meeting at 8, the agenda he hadn't finished reading. He stood up when she stood up and followed her off the bus and onto the sidewalk before he'd made a conscious decision about it. She noticed. She said, "No," he said. She looked at him. Then she started walking. He fell in beside her. Spring Garden Street at 7:10 in the morning. The snow had stopped, but the cold hadn't. A coffee cart on the corner with a line 6 people deep. A man shoveling the sidewalk in front of a row house, methodical, not looking up. The city at the part of morning when it was fully awake, but not yet performing. Neither of them said anything for half a block. "The benchmark," he said. "The $340. Where does it come from?" "Ask your team," she said. "I'm asking you." She walked another few steps. "It comes from organizations that do distribution," she said. "Worldview model. Donations come in, get sorted, get sent to partner agencies distribute. Efficient. Low overhead, clean numbers." She glanced at him. "Good benchmark if what you're measuring is throughput. And if you're not measuring throughput, then it's a number from a different job applied to this one," she said. "And the math doesn't work because the work doesn't work the same way." He thought about that. "Walk me through your costs," he said. She stopped, looked at him with the expression of someone deciding whether this was a real request or the kind of request that sounded real but was actually a setup for an argument she'd already lost. She started walking again. "Volunteer coordination," she said. "We have 14 volunteers across 6 stops. Recruiting, training, scheduling, covering when someone can't make it. That's staff time." She shifted the bag on her shoulder. "Procurement. We don't just take whatever donations come in. We source specific sizes, specific items, because a size 4 jacket doesn't help a 9-year-old. That costs more than taking whatever shows up." Another shift, and case tracking. The notebook. Knowing that Marcus is in a new foster placement. Knowing that Destiny's mom lost her job 2 weeks ago, and the family is doubling up with relatives, and there are now 3 kids at that stop instead of 1. She looked at him. "That's not in the benchmark. The benchmark doesn't know Destiny's mom lost her job." "How do you know?" he said. "Destiny told me," she said. "Last Thursday, while I was putting her gloves on, he walked next to her and said nothing." "The benchmark organizations," she said. "The ones at $340. I know some of them. Good organizations. They move a lot of product. Kids get coats." She paused. "They don't know Marcus's name. They can't. They're not built for it. They're built for scale." She looked at him. "Scale is valuable. I'm not saying it isn't. But scale and trust aren't the same thing. And for the kids at my stops, trust is the thing." He thought about the board meeting, 8 a.m. 7 people around a table, who had not been to Broad and Ellsworth at 6:48 in the morning, who had read page 4 and seen a number that didn't hit benchmark and drawn the logical conclusion from that number. The number was accurate. The conclusion was wrong. He knew that now. Had known it since he watched her zip the orange jacket to Marcus's chin, was understanding it more specifically with every half block they walked. The problem was, he didn't know what to do with knowing it. Reconsidering the partnership meant $240,000 going somewhere else, somewhere with better numbers. More kids served per dollar, cleaner metrics. And Marcus coming to Broad and Ellsworth on Tuesday, and finding nobody there. How many kids? He said. Across all 6 stops. 31 regular, she said. Maybe 45 over the course of a winter counting one-offs. He did the math. 240,000 divided by 45. 5,333 per child. He'd been looking at $847 and thinking it was too high. $5,333 was what it would actually cost to replace what Cold Weather Kids and Initiative did if you tried to replicate it. The trust, the names, the notebooks, the Tuesday and Thursday mornings. With something that didn't already exist, you couldn't replicate it. That was the point. Can I ask you something? He said. You've been asking me things for 20 minutes, she said. One more, he said. She glanced at him. When you started 4 years ago, he said. Why that? Specifically that. She was quiet for a moment. The coffee cart on the corner. The man with the shovel. A school bus moving slowly through the slush 2 blocks north. 2019, she said. Me and my daughter. 11 weeks at a shelter on Spring Garden. She said it the same way she said everything, directly, without performance. Someone gave my daughter a hat at a bus stop. Didn't make a thing of it. Just did it and walked away. She looked at the street ahead. I spent a year thinking about that woman. Never found her. Never got to say thank you. She paused. Eventually, I stopped trying to find her and started trying to be her. He walked next to her and didn't say anything because there was nothing to add to that. Half a block. You have a daughter, he said. Sophie, she said. 8. Does she know about the shelter? She shook her head. Not yet. She was 3. I'll tell her when she's old enough to understand that it doesn't define us. It's just something that happened and something that made us different. Different how? She looked at him. I don't walk past things anymore, she said. I used to. Everybody does. You see something and you think someone else will handle it, or it's not your place, or you don't have time. She shifted the bag again. I don't do that anymore. I stopped having the luxury of it, and then I just stopped, even after I didn't have to. He thought about this morning, his car in the garage, his driver not answering, the Uber canceling twice. Every system he'd built to avoid standing on a sidewalk in February not working, and him ending up at Broad and Ellsworth anyway, and seeing a woman he thought needed his coat. He hadn't walked past. He'd been wrong about what she needed. But he hadn't walked past. Maybe that was something. The board meeting, he said. This morning. 8 o'clock. She looked at him. Cold Weather Kids Initiative is on the agenda, he said. She stopped walking. He stopped with her. They were on the sidewalk in front of a row house with a blue door. The man with the shovel 2 houses down, the coffee cart behind them, Spring Garden Street going about its morning around them. She looked at him. Not with fear. Not with the performance of someone calculating how to respond to a powerful person. With the flat, clear attention of someone who had spent 4 years at bus stops in February and had learned that the only useful response to most situations was to look at them directly and say what was true. Are you going to cut us? She said. He looked at her, at the canvas bag, at the thin jacket, at the notebook she'd been writing in since 6:48, and the cold she still hadn't done anything about. I don't know yet, he said. It was the most honest thing he'd said all morning. She looked at him for a moment. Then she reached into the canvas bag. She pulled out a jacket, adult size, navy blue, held it out. He looked at it. I keep one extra, she said, in case. She paused. You've been cold for 20 minutes and you gave your coat to me and I said no and you've been standing in the snow ever since. He took the jacket. It was a little small across the shoulders. He put it on anyway. Thank you, he said. Don't cut us, she said. She turned and walked back toward the coffee cart. He stood on the sidewalk in a slightly too small navy jacket and watched her go and thought about 8 o'clock and page 4 and 31 kids who came back because someone knew their names. He picked up his phone. He called Patricia. Move the 8 o'clock, he said. The board is all ready. Move it, he said. I need 2 hours first. He hung up. He looked at the direction Laura had gone. He had 2 hours. He knew how he wanted to use them. He found her at the coffee cart. She was third in line, canvas bag on the ground between her feet, phone in one hand. She didn't see him come up behind her. Or she did and chose not to acknowledge it. With Laura Kim, he was starting to understand those two things weren't always distinguishable. He got in line behind her. She ordered. Black coffee, small, 2.50. Paid with the same tap card she'd used on the bus. He ordered the same. She looked at him when he said it. You don't strike me as a black coffee small kind of person, she said. I'm not, he said. But I need the next 2 hours to look like something other than what they usually look like. She picked up her cup, looked at him over the rim. You moved the board meeting, she said. 2 hours, he said. For what? He looked at her. Show me, he said, the stops, the notebook, what the work actually looks like. Not the report version, the Tuesday morning version. He paused. I've been funding organizations for 15 years based on what the numbers say. I want to see what the numbers don't say. She held her coffee. He could see her deciding. Not whether he was serious. She'd made that call already, sometime between the bus and the sidewalk and the navy jacket she'd handed him. She was deciding whether serious was enough, whether 2 hours with a billionaire who had a board meeting at 10 and a report on his phone that recommended cutting her funding was worth the time it would take away from everything else Tuesday morning required. I have 2 more stops, she said. Fitzwater and Ninth, then Tasker and Broad. I'll come, he said. You'll carry the bag, she said. He looked at the canvas bag on the ground. 40 pounds, easy, maybe more. Okay, he said. She picked up the bag and held it out. He took it. It was heavier than it looked. She started walking. Fitzwater and Ninth was 4 blocks south. He carried the bag, and she carried her coffee, and they walked without talking, which he was learning was her default. Not unfriendly, just efficient. Conversation as a tool used when it was the right tool, and set down when it wasn't. He used the silence to think. The board meeting. Patricia's report. The benchmark. 340 versus $847. He'd been in philanthropy long enough to know that the benchmark problem wasn't new. You couldn't fund every organization that did good work. The money wasn't infinite. The measurement had to come from somewhere. And cost per unit served was a reasonable proxy when you couldn't be everywhere at once. The problem was proxy. A proxy was what you measured when you couldn't measure the thing itself. And the thing itself, trust, continuity, the specific, he caught himself, the knowledge of which kid came back 3 weeks in a row and why. That wasn't in the benchmark, because the benchmark had been built by people who were measuring what they could measure, not what mattered. He'd built a lot of things by measuring what he could measure. He was carrying a 40-pound bag through South Philadelphia in a jacket that was too small for him and reconsidering some of them. Fitzwater and Ninth had 6 kids. Laura knew all of them. He stood back and watched her work, the same efficiency as before, same notebook, same way of reading each kid before she reached into the bag. A girl who got mittens and a scarf and a look that said, I know you lost the last pair, and we're not talking about it. A boy who got a jacket 2 sizes bigger than he probably needed. He watched Laura note something about that, the size, a question mark, and understood she was tracking something, a pattern, a reason. After the last kid, she stood next to him while they waited for the school bus. The boy, he said, grows fast, she said. Foster care, placements change. Bigger size means it lasts longer, travels better. She drank her coffee. Learned that in year 2. Year 2. He thought about what year 2 meant, the accumulation of that kind of knowledge. Not from a manual, not from a training, from standing at a bus stop in the cold for 4 years and paying attention. Does your organization document this? He said. What you just said about the jacket, the reasoning behind it. In the notebook, she said. Not in your reports to funders. She looked at him. Would you read it? She said. He opened his mouth, closed it. No, he said. Probably not. Right, she said. So we give you the numbers. The school bus came. The kids got on. She watched until the doors closed. They walked to Tasker and Broad. Tasker and Broad was the longest stop. 8 kids, 2 of whom weren't there yet when they arrived. Laura set up anyway, bag open, items sorted by size on the bench beside her, notebook out. She'd done this before. She knew the timing. He sat on the bench next to the sorted items and watched the street. A woman walked past with a stroller, the baby bundled so thoroughly only its eyes were visible. A man in a hard hat waited at the corner for the light. A bodega across the street was doing steady business. Coffee, cigarettes, the particular commerce of early morning. Can I ask you something? He said. Still asking, she said. 2019, he said. The shelter. How long did it take to get back on your feet? She looked at the street. 8 months to get the apartment, she said. Another 6 before I stopped checking my bank account every day, like the number was going to be different from what I knew it was. She paused. 2 years before I stopped keeping a bag packed in the closet. He said nothing. Sophie doesn't know about the bag, she said. I'll tell her about that too. When she's old enough. What will you tell her it was for? She thought about it. That there was a time when I needed to know we could leave fast, she said. And that needing that was okay. And that we don't need it anymore. She paused. And that the reason we don't need it anymore isn't luck. It's because we built something solid enough to stay in. He looked at the jacket she was wearing. The thin one. You built something solid, he said. The bag's still canvas. She looked at him. Something crossed her face. Not quite a smile. The expression of someone who had been seen accurately and wasn't sure how to hold it. I keep meaning to replace it, she said. The jacket or the bag? The jacket, she said. The bag is fine. When's the last time you bought yourself something you needed? He said. She didn't answer right away. The two kids who hadn't been there arrived, a brother and sister, maybe 6 and 8, running from the direction of a row house halfway down the block, backpacks bouncing. Laura had their stuff ready before they reached the bench. Jackets, gloves, the sister's hat with the name written inside in marker. She'd been losing them. Laura had started labeling. The kids took their things and ran to the far end of the bench to argue about something. Laura watched them. November, she said. He looked at her. Last time I bought something I needed, she said. Before I gave it away. He thought about that. About a woman who had spent 11 weeks in a shelter in 2019 and had come out the other side, and had spent 4 years giving away warm things to kids at bus stops, and had given her good coat to a woman with a baby in November, and was still cold in February, and had a bag packed in the closet until 2 years ago, and had a daughter named Sophie who thought the notebook was a grocery list. He thought about Patricia's line. Recommend reconsidering partnership at next cycle. He thought about what reconsidering looked like from this bench. 31 kids who came back. A notebook full of names. A woman in a thin jacket who hadn't bought herself anything since November because something else always needed it more. What would it take, he said, to make the numbers work, the cost per child, the benchmark? What would it take to get there without losing what you actually do? She looked at him. You're asking me to solve your measurement problem, she said. I'm asking if it's solvable, he said. By me, she said. On this bench, this morning? Start there, he said. She looked at the street for a moment. Then she opened the notebook. She turned to a page near the back. Not the tracking pages, something else. Notes. A list. Small handwriting, organized. The kind of thinking that happened on paper, because the paper made it real. She'd been thinking about this already. He looked at the page. You wrote this, he said, last month, she said, after our director told us the funding conversation was coming. She looked at him. I didn't know who to send it to. I didn't know if anyone would read it. He took the notebook. He read. The page had a title, not a formal one, just a line at the top in the same small handwriting as everything else. What we actually measure and what we don't. 2 columns. Left column, what funders count. Items distributed. Children served. Cost per unit. Geographic reach, year-over-year growth. Right column, what we count. Return rate. Name recognition, size accuracy over time. Trust indicators. Continuity of relationship. He read both columns twice. Return rate, he said. What percentage of kids come back, she said. Week over week. Our return rate is 84%. I've been tracking it for 2 years. 84%, he said. The benchmark organizations, she said. I've asked around. Average return rate is somewhere between 20 and 30% because they're not built for return, they're built for reach. One-time distribution. Move on. Serve the next zip code. He looked at the right column. Trust indicators. She defined it below. Kids who make eye contact. Kids who ask for specific items. Kids who bring other kids. Kids who bring other kids, he said. Marcus brought his cousin 2 weeks ago, she said. Didn't say anything about it. Just showed up with another kid who needed a jacket. She looked at the notebook. That's not in any report we've ever sent you. But that's the whole thing working. He turned the page. A second list. Costs broken down differently from the way they appeared in the annual report. Not by category, by function. What it actually costs to know a kid's name. What it costs to track size changes over a winter. What it costs to be at the same corner at the same time every week, so that a 7-year-old in a new foster placement knew where to go when things changed. He looked at the numbers. They told a different story than the report. Not a cheaper story, a more accurate one. You built a parallel accounting system, he said. I built a way to explain what we do, she said. In case anyone ever asked, she paused. Nobody asked. Until this morning. He looked at the page, at the handwriting, at the 2 years of tracking data organized on notebook paper at a kitchen table, while an 8-year-old did homework across from her. He thought about the reports his team produced, the clean PDFs, the graphs, the executive summaries that reduced everything to a number that could be compared to a benchmark that had been set by people who had never sat on a bench at Tasker and Broad at 7:30 in the morning. The reports were accurate. They were not true. There was a difference, and he had spent 15 years not examining it closely enough. The right column, he said. Return rate, trust indicators, size accuracy. He looked at her. Has anyone ever asked you to report on these? No, she said. Why not? Because they're harder to verify, she said. A funder can confirm how many jackets we distributed. They can't confirm that Marcus came back because he trusts us, and not because we're the only option. She looked at the street. So we report the jackets and lose the funding anyway, he said. She looked at him. We report the jackets, she said, and you compare our cost per jacket to an organization that mails jackets from a warehouse in New Jersey and decide we're inefficient. She said it without heat. Just the flatness of someone describing a thing that had happened and was probably going to happen again. The warehouse organization is efficient. They're just not doing the same job. He sat with that. The school bus at Tasker came and went. The 8 kids scattered. The bench emptied out. Laura collected the bag. He'd forgotten he was supposed to be carrying it. She'd taken it back at some point without comment and closed the notebook. The street quieted down to its regular Tuesday morning. Patricia, he said. She looked at him. My director of philanthropic investments, he said. She wrote the recommendation. One line. Recommend reconsidering the partnership. He paused. She's not wrong, based on what she had. I know, Laura said. She didn't have the right column, he said. She didn't ask for it, Laura said. Not accusatory. Factual. We didn't ask for it, he said. That's on us. She looked at him. Not with the relief of someone who had just been told they were safe, with the careful attention of someone who had been told things before and had learned to wait and see whether the telling produced anything. He understood that. He'd told organizations things before and not followed through. Not from bad faith, from the specific. He stopped. From the distance between a board meeting and a bus stop. From the way good intentions looked different at 10 floors up than they did at street level. From the gap between what he'd believed about his foundation's work and what he'd just spent 2 hours learning. The notebook, he said, the right column. The return rate, the trust indicators, the parallel accounting. He looked at her. If I asked you to formalize this, turn it into a reporting framework, something we could actually use to evaluate the work, could you do that? She looked at him. That's work, she said. I know, he said. That's why I'm asking if you could do it, not telling you to do it. Paid work, she said. Yes, he said. She looked at the notebook, at the 2 columns, at 2 years of tracking data she'd built on her own time at her kitchen table because nobody had asked, and she'd done it anyway because she needed to be able to explain what they did in case anyone ever asked. Someone had asked. It would take time, she said, real time, not Tuesday and Thursday morning time. I know, he said, and it would need to be tested, she said, across different organizations, different models. You can't just take what works at 6 bus stops in South Philadelphia and call it a universal framework. I know that too, he said. She looked at him. You're not just talking about cold weather kids, she said. No, he said. I'm talking about how we evaluate every organization we fund that does work like yours. Relational work, trust-based work. Work that doesn't fit the warehouse model. He paused. We've been applying the wrong measurement to the wrong thing for a long time. I'd like to stop. She was quiet. The coffee cart line had thinned out. The man with the shovel was done and had gone inside. Spring Garden Street was into its regular Tuesday now. The rush of the morning thinning out. The city settling into its work. If I build this, she said, the framework, and you use it, and other funders start using it. She looked at it. What happens to the organizations that still don't measure up? Even by the right measure? He looked at her. It was a good question. The right question. Some of them need to improve, he said. Some of them are genuinely not working, and the benchmark is protecting against that too, imperfect. The benchmark isn't all wrong. It's just not all right either. He paused. The framework doesn't make every organization fundable. It makes sure we're not defunding the right ones for the wrong reasons. She thought about that. He let her think. A woman walked past with a stroller, the same one from earlier, or one that looked like it. The baby was asleep. The woman's face had the particular expression of someone who had been outside longer than she planned and was almost home. The jacket, Laura said. He looked at her. You've been cold for 2 hours, said. The one I gave you is too small and I can see it. I'm fine, he said. She looked at him. You're not fine, she said, but you're warmer than you were. He looked down at the navy jacket. Too small across the shoulders. Zip stuck halfway. He'd forgotten about it. Yes, he said. I am. She picked up the bag. I need to get to work, she said. I know, he said. So do I. She started walking. Laura, she stopped it. The framework, he said. If you build it the way you built the notebook, from what you actually know, not from what you think I want to see. She looked at him over her shoulder. That's the only way I know how to build things, she said. She walked. He stood on the sidewalk and watched her go. Canvas bag, thin jacket, notebook in her hand, and thought about 8 o'clock and Patricia and 31 kids who came back in a right column that nobody had ever asked for. He picked up his phone. He called Patricia again. I need you to pull every organization we fund that does direct service work, he said. Relational model. Field-based. Not warehouse. Not distribution. The ones where the work happens between people. That's about 40 organizations, Patricia said. Good, he said. I want to meet with all of them. He paused. And I want you to ask each of them the same question before the meeting. What question? She said. What do you measure that we've never asked you to report? He said. Silence. That's going to produce a lot of information, Patricia said. I know, he said. That's the point. He hung up. He stood on Spring Garden Street in a too small navy jacket in February and looked at the direction Laura had gone. He had a board meeting in 40 minutes. He had a lot to say. The board meeting started 12 minutes late because James was 12 minutes late, not because of traffic, because he'd stopped at the coffee cart on Spring Garden and bought 2 black coffees and stood on the sidewalk and drank one of them slowly while he thought about what he was going to say. He'd given the other one to the man shoveling the sidewalk outside his building. The man had looked at him. Cold morning, James said. Every morning's cold, the man said. He took the coffee. James had thought about that for the 4-block walk to the office. Every morning's cold. Not for him. Not usually. Not since the business had money, and the money had a driver, and the driver had a backup. He'd insulated himself from cold mornings so thoroughly that it had taken a car that wouldn't start, and a driver who didn't answer, and a backup 40 minutes out for him to end up at a bus stop in February and understand something he should have understood a long time ago. He got to the conference room at 8:12. 7 people around the table. Patricia at the far end with the report open in front of her. His COO, Marcus Lee, who looked at the too small navy jacket and said nothing because 20 years of working together had taught him when to say nothing. 5 board members who had been here since 8 and were doing the thing board members did when a meeting ran late. Checking phones with the specific performative patience of people who had other places to be. James sat down. He did not apologize for being late. Before we start, he said, I want to ask everyone in this room a question. Patricia looked up. When's the last time you were at a bus stop? He said. Not a cab, not a car service, a city bus stop, early morning. Silence. Marcus Lee, 2019. My car was in the shop. One board member, Eleanor Voss, 62, who had grown up in West Philadelphia before her career took her elsewhere. Last month, my grandson's school pickup. The others, varying versions of it's been a while. James nodded. This morning, he said, Broad and Ellsworth, 6:48. He put the navy jacket on the back of his chair. My car didn't start. He told them what he'd seen. Not everything, the relevant parts. The woman with the canvas bag. The 8 kids at the first stop. Marcus in the orange jacket. The notebook, the 2 columns. He didn't perform it. He said it the way Laura said things, directly without making it bigger than it was, letting the facts do the work. When he finished, the room was quiet. Patricia looked at the report in front of her. Page 4, she said. Page 4, he said. The numbers are accurate, she said. Not defensively. Patricia didn't do defensive, she did precise. Cost per child served is 840. 340. The gap is real. The gap is real, he said. The benchmark is wrong. She looked at him. The benchmark was set by distribution organizations, he said. Werhoud's model. High volume, low touch. It's the right benchmark for that model. He looked at the table. Cold Weather Kids Initiative is not that model. They're a relational model. Trust-based, continuity-focused, field-based. Applying a distribution benchmark to a relational model is like measuring a surgeon's efficiency by how fast they work. Speed matters in surgery, Marcus Lee said. Not as much as accuracy, James said, and not as the primary metric. Eleanor Voss was leaning forward. The return rate, she said, 84%. That's in the report? It's not in any report we've received, James said. It's in a notebook. A spiral-bound notebook that a volunteer carries in a canvas bag to 6 bus stops every Tuesday and Thursday. He looked at her. She's been tracking it for 2 years. Nobody asked her to. Nobody told her it mattered. She did it because she needed to be able to explain what she does in case anyone ever asked. We never asked, Patricia said. We never asked, he confirmed. The room was quiet again. He looked at Patricia. Pull up the full report, he said. Page 4. The cost breakdown. She turned the laptop toward him. He looked at the line items. Staff time, procurement. Item storage, transportation. Procurement, he said. We're flagging this as high. $34,000 annually. It's 40% above sector average, Patricia said. Because they source specific sizes, he said. Not whatever's donated. A size 4 jacket for a 9-year-old doesn't work. They buy what the kids actually need. He looked at Patricia. That's not inefficiency. That's the job. She looked at the number. Volunteer coordination, he said. We're flagging this too. $28,000, she said. For 14 volunteers across 6 stops. That's $2,000 per volunteer annually. That's what it costs to recruit, train, and retain people who know the kids by name, he said. Who know that Marcus is in a new foster placement, and Destiny's mom lost her job, and one of the twins is having trouble at school. He paused. The warehouse model doesn't need that. They need bodies to sort boxes. Different skill set, different cost. Marcus Lee was writing something. Eleanor Voss had put her phone face down on the table. The framework question, Patricia said slowly. If the benchmark is wrong for this model, what's the right benchmark? That's what I want to build, James said. A measurement framework for relational nonprofit work. Right column metrics, return rate, trust indicators, continuity of relationship, size accuracy over time. He looked at the room. The woman who runs this program has been building it in a notebook for 2 years. I want to formalize it. With her, Eleanor said. With her, he confirmed. She knows the work from the inside. We know the funding landscape from the outside. Both things are necessary. Patricia looked at the report. If we build this framework, she said, and apply it retroactively to our current portfolio, we're going to find other organizations we've been evaluating against the wrong benchmark. I know, he said. I told you to pull them this morning. She looked up. 40 organizations, she said. I want to meet all of them, he said. Same question to each one. What do you measure that we've never asked you to report? He paused. And I want the meetings at their sites, not here, where they work. That's a significant time commitment, Marcus Lee said. I know, James said. The board will want to understand the rationale, Eleanor said. James looked at her. Tell them the rationale is that we've been funding work we don't fully understand and making decisions based on measurements that weren't designed for the work we're trying to support, he said. And that we found that out because a car wouldn't start this morning and a driver didn't answer, and a woman at a bus stop paid my fare and told me the truth. Eleanor looked at him. Something crossed her face that he recognized. The expression of someone who had grown up in West Philadelphia and had moved into rooms like this one and had spent years holding both of those things simultaneously without always knowing what to do with the tension between them. I'll tell them, she said. The meeting ran an hour. At the end of it, 3 things had been decided. Cold Weather Kids Initiative would receive continued funding, not just continued, increased. The additional $40,000 specifically for Laura's time developing the measurement framework, paid work, real rate. 15 hours a month at a consulting rate that reflected what the work was worth. Patricia would begin outreach to the 40 organizations, site visits, the question James had told her to ask, and the benchmark. The $340 number would be suspended as the primary evaluation metric for relational model organizations pending development of the new framework. Not eliminated, suspended. Because Patricia had been right, the benchmark wasn't all wrong. It was just being used for the wrong thing, and fixing that required building the right thing first. James had spent 15 years building things. He knew how to start. He left the meeting at 9:47. He took the elevator down to the lobby. He stood at the building entrance and looked at the street. Philadelphia at 9:47 in the morning. The snow from earlier, already turning gray at the edges, the way city snow did, absorbing the soot and the exhaust and the general weight of being in a place with a lot of people moving through it. He looked down at the navy jacket still over his arm. Too small, zip stuck at halfway. The kind of jacket that had been bought for someone else and had ended up here through a chain of small decisions that had started at a bus stop at 6:48 in the morning. He thought about Laura walking back toward the coffee cart. Thin jacket, canvas bag, notebook in hand. Tuesday morning, doing the work. He took out his phone. He found the Cold Weather Kids Initiative website. Found the donate page. He didn't donate. He found the volunteer page instead. Read it. Closed the phone. Looked at the street for a moment. Then he went back inside. He had work to do. 3 weeks later, Laura was at Broad and Ellsworth at 6:48 a.m. Same bench, same canvas bag, same thin jacket. Marcus was there. Orange jacket, zipped to the chin, 5 weeks straight now. She'd stopped noting the return in the notebook because at some point a pattern stopped being data and started being just what was true. He came back. That was what was true. She worked through the bag. 7 kids that morning, 1 new face, a girl, maybe 8, standing slightly apart with the careful posture of someone not yet sure a place was safe. Laura didn't rush her. She set a pair of gloves on the bench beside her, didn't offer them directly, just left them there and moved on. By the time the bus came, the gloves were on the girl's hands. Laura wrote the name in the notebook. Alia, age 8, first time, return next week, check size. The school bus came. The kids got on, the bench empty. She sat down and opened her laptop, the framework document. Trust indicators, draft 3. She added a line. New child accepts item left on bench without direct offer. Indicates sufficient safety to receive without obligation. She looked at it. That was Alaya. That was one morning. That was the thing the benchmark didn't have a number for. She wrote it down anyway. She looked at the empty corner. Gray February light. The sun up somewhere even if you couldn't see it. She thought about the woman who had put a hat on Sophie's head in 2019 and walked away. Still didn't know her name, didn't need to anymore. She picked up the bag. She had a job to get to. Subscribe if you're new. Share this with someone doing quiet work nobody's measuring right, and tell me, what do you do that nobody's ever asked you to report? I read everyone. See you in the next story.